Acting up, female role. Terry had been out of his shower and was nearly done shaving his beard off before Nikki returned home. She stood at the bathroom door for a moment watching Terry finish shaving. For the 100th time, she admired his slender, well-toned body. Barely 27, Terry was a fitness fanatic. He ate well-balanced meals and went to the gym at least 3 times a week. His only fault, if you could call it that, was that he was, as one director had commented, too pretty for most male parts. When he did get a part, it was usually portraying high school students, sometimes as young as 14, 13 years younger than his actual age. He had won his most recent part, that of a non-speaking role of a Shakespearean spear carrier, only because he'd grown a beard. Well, that handicap would prove to be his greatest strength. To Nikki, it was obvious why the director had selected Terry to be Elliana. With a little bit of work, he would make a decent-looking woman. Certainly as good a woman as Elliana, who had been a male for most of her life. Terry glanced at Nikki in the mirror. "Like what you see?" he joked. "Very much so," Nikki admitted. There was a long pause before she spoke again. "I was just trying to picture you as a woman." "Well, what do you think?" Terry smiled, making a bodybuilder's pose. "I think you could, with a little work, make a very creditable woman." Terry's bodybuilder's pose quickly deflated. "Gee, thanks." Nikki laughed, then grew serious. "Terry, consider what the role will mean for us. How long does the rehearsal period last?" "I don't know, 4-5 weeks? Depends on how many script revisions there are." "Okay. Typically, there are 5 or 6 performances a week, correct?" "Yeah. So what's your point?" "Let's assume that the play closes after 2 months." Nikki paused, mentally calculating the amount in her head. "For 3 months of you pretending to be a woman, you will be paid $124,000. Even better, we will have free medical for a whole year." "That is a lot of money," Terry allowed thoughtfully. "Yes, it is." "It will be more than enough to pay for the baby when she comes," Nikki said so softly that Terry wasn't sure what she had said. Did you say baby?" Nikki smiled shyly. "Yes, dear. We're going to have a baby in about 8 months." "What? Why? How?" Terry stuttered, bringing a laugh from Nikki. "If you really have to ask how," Nikki laughed, "it's a good thing that you're not a woman. You'd be popping a baby out every 9 months. Terry stepped to his wife and gave her a cautious hug, bringing another laugh from Nikki. "I don't break, dear. And, just to reassure you, according to the doctor, we can have sex almost to the due date." Terry grinned broadly. "Well, then, why don't we?" "Calm down, Sparky. We've got a lot of work to do before we can go to bed." She smiled, then qualified her statement. "Well, you can lay on the bed, but you'll have to be naked." "Well, that sounds like a good beginning." Terry suppressed the scream with a great deal of difficulty. "My God!" he exclaimed. "How do women do this? Or, more importantly, why?" Nikki smiled and ripped another wax strip off Terry's stomach. "You big sissy," she laughed. "To answer your question, women have waxing done to look sexy for their men. After you've had 2 or 3 sessions, it will get easier." "That's easy for you to say," Terry muttered under his breath. Unfortunately, Nikki heard the comment. "Yes, it will, honey. I've had regular wax sessions for years. The last time was about a month and a half ago, the day you big stud, impregnated me." She giggled as she gently patted his genitals. "Just be grateful that I'm not going to give you a full Brazilian." "A Brazilian? What's that?" "That, my dear, beloved and clueless husband, is the wax job that removes all, and I mean all of the hair down here." She patted his genitals again. Terry paled and shuddered. "Okay, turn over and I'll do your back. Then I'll rub you down with the body lotion I use when I get. That will be a relief. In the meantime, I need another beer." "Does a beer ease the pain?" Nikki asked curiously. "No, but I figure that if I get drunk enough, it won't matter." Nikki ran her hand over Terry's stomach. "Num-num, sexy," she purred. For some reason, I think your hairless body is really turning me on. We'll have to do this again, sweetheart. Somehow, I don't doubt that in the least. Terry reached over to hold Nikki in his arms, only to realize she had gotten out of bed. Hey, Terry honey. This has been lots of fun, more for me than you, I think. But it's late, and I have to go to work tomorrow, Nikki said as she slipped under the covers. Here, put this on. It will make your abused body feel better. She placed something soft in his hand. What is this? It's one of my nightshirts. Your skin will be too sensitive for a while for you to wear your pajamas comfortably. Put the nightshirt on and go to sleep. Sitting up in bed, Terry slowly pulled the nightshirt over his head. Sighing, slipped his arms through the short sleeves and worked the silky garment down his body. That task was completed, and he lay back and tried to go to sleep. His last conscious thought was that Nikki had been right. The nightshirt was more comfortable than his pajamas. When Terry awoke the following morning, Nikki had already left for work. Nursing a hangover, Terry went to his closet to get his robe. Hanging in its place was Nikki's. Terry hesitated for a moment, then decided since he was already wearing one of her nightshirts, it wouldn't matter much if he wore her robe as well. Terry walked into the kitchen and found a note from Nikki on the table. She had taken the contract to work with her. She wanted her grandfather, the attorney, to review and advise how best to proceed. While she was still troubled that Terry had signed the contract without her reviewing it, she was happy that he had finally gotten a part that was worthy of this considerable talent. Terry read the brief note and made himself a cup of coffee. A cup of coffee and a couple of aspirins later, Terry was starting to feel a little more human. Finishing his coffee, he rose, placed the dirty cup in the sink, and headed to the bathroom to take a shower. He took off Nikki's nightshirt and robe. He paused for a second, suddenly realizing that he had been able to wear Terry's night clothes without much difficulty. Until that very instance, he hadn't realized how close in size to Nikki he was. They were within an inch in height, her 5'8" to his 5'9", and their weight was within 20 pounds, 150 to 130. Terry studied his naked, nearly hairless body in the bathroom mirror. Terry hadn't been particularly hirsute before Nikki had so mercilessly stripped him of nearly all of his body hair below his neck. Now, with just the neat bikini trim that she had left him, he looked and felt naked. Sighing, Terry turned from the mirror and stepped into the shower. Terry wasn't surprised to find a woman's undergarment lying on top of his dresser. The note wasn't a particular surprise either. Wear this under your regular clothing today. Terry laughed. There was nothing subtle about her note. Shrugging his shoulders, he pulled the panties on with some difficulty. The beige panties was actually a shapewear garment rather than regular panties. The garment was high-waisted, ending about 5 inches above his waist and extending down his thighs about 6 inches. They had a seam up the center of the back that supposedly lifted and separated the butt cheeks. The front had a strong extra panel that created a flatter stomach. Terry had seen the garment on Nikki on occasion before, usually when she was having her period when she said that she felt bloated. He was mildly surprised to find he was growing erect. He waited a few minutes until his erection softened, then tucked his penis back between his legs. He pulled the garment up further and was stunned to feel his testicles being pushed up into his body by the tight garment. It took him a few minutes to become accustomed to the odd feeling before he pulled the garment the rest of the way up. He smiled to himself at the nearly flat front of his groin. For some bizarre reason, he felt more comfortable with how he looked. He wasn't terribly surprised to find his jeans, normally a little snug, felt a lot looser, particularly in the waist. The shapewear garment had reduced his waist by at least 2 inches. His rear looked a little fuller. The butt cheek lifts obviously worked. Dressed in his typical weekend jeans and a t-shirt, Terry ate a brief breakfast and cleaned his dishes and utensils before sitting down to read the script. With a fresh cup of coffee, Terry began reading. After a few pages, he put the script down and started reading the biography. He had almost finished the bio when Nikki returned home. Terry smiled when she walked into the kitchen. How was work? Nikki's expression was serious as she sat down across from her husband. Grandpa went over the contract this morning. He said that the way it was written, it will be difficult to break if you want to get out of the play. Why would I want to do that? Terry asked. Because, dear, Grandpa knew the real Elliana and doesn't think that you will be happy in the part. Nikki paused, seeing the expression on Terry's face. But he confirmed that it is the lead. You'll be playing Elliana. Was there some doubt? I wasn't really sure, Nikki confessed. Then why did you go through with giving me a wax job and leaving a girdle for me to wear? It's called shapewear, dear. You're wearing it? Nikki asked, surprised. I was just kidding about that. The waxing, well, let's just say I've always wanted to see you hairless. Very funny, Terry said sarcastically. Nikki looked thoughtful for a moment. Well, don't keep me in suspense. How does it feel? Do you like wearing it? Terry reddened. It's okay, I guess. Not very convenient, though. Nikki raised an eyebrow. Not very convenient? In what way? She asked, knowing full well what he was referring to. Well, Terry began, blushing slightly. When I had to go to the bathroom, I had to pull my pants and the shaper down rather than just unzipping. Nikki laughed. Did you sit too? Terry blushed again, although he didn't really know why. Yes, I did. Welcome to the club, sweetie, Nikki grinned. Since you've decided to play the role, I guess I should give you your gifts. Gifts? A package of knee-highs, a pair of... Wait, don't tell me. A pair of high-heeled shoes. Whatever gave you that idea? It's a pair of ballet flats. Most women don't routinely wear high heels unless it's a special occasion, or they're part of an implied or written work dress code. I never thought about that before, but of course you're right, Terry said, looking at the navy blue flats curiously. How do they stay on your feet? Sometimes they don't, but mostly they do. You'll just have to wear them for a while to see what I mean. Terry looked at the shoes again. Think they'll fit? They look awfully small. Nikki just sighed and handed him the shoes and the knee-high stockings. Do you want me to show you how to put the knee-highs on? I think I can manage. Good. When you have the knee-highs on, come into the bedroom. I have a pair of pants for you to wear. Terry quickly pulled a pair of knee-highs on and followed his wife to the bedroom. Nikki told him to remove his pants and handed him a pair of what, at first glance, looked like a pair of regular five-pocket jeans. On closer inspection, however, Terry discovered that the jeans were pull-on style with a fake fly and front pockets. The rear pockets were just big enough to carry a cell phone. He looked at Nikki, who just smiled. They'll help you remember to sit. Terry pulled the jeans on and slipped his feet into the ballet flats. He was surprised to see that not only did they fit, they were actually very comfortable. I'm impressed that you got them in the right size. Found the correct size on the internet. There are conversion tables for women to men's sizes and vice versa. Okay, now what? Now, sweetie, we're going to go to Annie's. Annie's? What's that? Annie's is where you are going to become Elliana in person. Seeing the blank look on Terry's face, she shook her head. It's my beauty parlor. You know, where I have my hair and nails done. I can't go out looking like this, Terry protested. I don't see why not. I'm wearing a pair of women's shoes and pull-on jeans, that's why. Take a look in the mirror, Nikki suggested. Terry was surprised to see what, at first glance, appeared to be a plain-looking young woman without makeup and a badly styled haircut. He looked down at his groin. The shapewear was doing its job. There wasn't a hint of his male organs. The only deviation from a real woman's body was the lack of a wider pelvis and a flat chest. See, it won't be a problem, Nikki said. There's only one more thing that we need to do, then we can leave. She held up a padded bra and a woman's t-shirt. Terry just groaned. Just think of all this as a costume for a part in a play. Terry was understandably nervous being out in public. Even though he had been reassured several times that he passed, he was afraid that he would be jumped or at least arrested for impersonating a woman. Fortunately, the trip to the beauty parlor was without incident. Terry was a little shaken, however, when Nikki announced to the receptionist that he needed A, women's haircut and B, Makeup instructions. Hey, I know how to do makeup, Terry protested. Nikki turned and looked sternly at him. Honey, you might think you know how to apply makeup, but you know nothing about women's day or nighttime makeup. There's a big difference between regular makeup and theatrical makeup. Okay, I'll concede that, Terry said after a moment of thought. But can't you do it? Nikki just looked at him and shook her head. No. Now behave yourself or I'll cut you off for the rest of the month. The receptionist, who had been following the conversation with interest and watching Nikki, suddenly turned to Terry with an open mouth. She just realized what Nikki had said previously. She's a man, she asked in surprise. Terry rolled his eyes as Nikki confirmed that he was indeed a male. Unfortunately, he is. At least he thinks he is. He's my husband, the worm. I'm trying to make a sissy out of him so I can have a maid. I really don't have time to clean house and service my real lover at the same time. The receptionist's mouth dropped open further. Not sure if she was being kidded or not, she swallowed twice and called a technician. An attractive older woman stepped up to the reception desk. Smiling broadly, the technician pointed to an empty station. Why don't you have a seat? I'll be there in a moment. Nikki nodded and led Terry to the empty chair. She pointed to the chair and said in a loud voice, "Sit." Terry, embarrassed beyond tears, sat. He started to say something when he noticed the expression on Nikki's face. Whatever he had to say, now was not the time to say it. A few minutes later, Nikki and the technician returned to the station. Speaking only to Nikki, she asked, "What did you have in mind for your sissy?" Terry cringed while Nikki struggled to suppress a laugh. She ran her fingers through Terry's shoulder-length hair as if she was thinking about what she wanted done. In reality, she knew exactly what she wanted. I'd like him to have a shampoo, a body perm, and a trim in a pageboy style with bangs down to his eyebrows. She thought for a moment, then added, I would like to change his hair color. Based on his eye color and complexion, what color would you recommend? I would like to keep it looking natural if you can. The technician looked carefully at Terry, taking in his skin and eye color, then nodded. I can do that. I'd recommend a light brown with some blonde highlights. She held out her hand to Nikki. As Nikki shook it, she continued. My name is Annie, by the way. I own this establishment. I'm more than happy to see one of these scumbags get their comeuppance. I understand you want me to teach him how to apply makeup. Nikki nodded. I would recommend trimming his eyebrows first. Electrolysis? Nikki glanced at Terry and shook her head no. Threading then? It's not permanent. It lasts about 6 weeks before it grows out again. That would be acceptable. While you're at it, can we have his ears pierced? 2 or 3 holes. Sorry, do you want 2 or 3 holes in each ear? Just 1, I think. We can always come back later if I decide to have more done, Nikki said, much to Terry's relief. Nikki followed Terry and Annie to the shampoo station. When Terry leaned back at the sink, Nikki asked Annie if she knew somewhere she could find some breast prostheses, preferably those that could be glued on. Annie recommended a store about a mile from the salon. Nikki patted Terry's chest, smiled, and said, Don't worry, dear. I'll be back with a nice pair of boobies for you to play with. I was thinking of double D. It will be a little hard to find a bra that fits correctly, but since they'll be glued to your chest, that shouldn't be a problem. You can go braless if you want. She turned to Annie. I almost forgot, he needs a mani-pedi, nail extensions, and polish. You can choose the color, as long as it's bright. Terry, slowly becoming convinced that Nikki was serious, groaned, bringing a laugh from both Annie and Nikki. Terry missed the knowing wink between the two women. The visit to Annie's beauty parlor was a setup pre-planned by Nikki and Annie. They had known each other since high school and were close friends.